Welcome to His Word Heals. You can also visit us online at www.hiswordheals.com. In today's program, we are going to take a look at the third temple and the abomination that makes desolate. In order to understand what may soon come to pass on Temple Mount, we must look at various positions regarding the rebuilding of the Jewish temple, i.e., the third temple. We all know that one of the main obstacles in the way of rebuilding a Jewish temple on Temple Mount are the Islamic buildings which are currently occupying this space. In our understanding, there are 4 to 5 main trains of thought or 4 main beliefs on how a third temple in Jerusalem could be accomplished. There are other ideas as well, such as the resurrection of a temporary mobile tabernacle in Shiloh, but we are only going to be dealing with a temple in Jerusalem for our purposes today, as this seems like the most likely yet most controversial possibility. And I say 4 to 5 main beliefs or possibilities because number 1 is that no temple needs to be rebuilt in order for the abomination that makes desolate to be erected in the holy place. Perhaps just an altar with the restarting of the sacrifices, or a temporary tabernacle like Moses' tabernacle in the wilderness on Temple Mount, and also an altar. It only takes a sacrificial altar on Temple Mount upon which animal sacrifices are reestablished with or without all of the current buildings still in place on Temple Mount. And this certainly is a possibility. However, while we believe this may be the case as a precursor or possibly even a false abomination of desolation, we don't believe this will be what the ultimate fulfillment will look like. More likely, an altar all by itself or with the tabernacle on Temple Mount would be temporary while an actual temple is being constructed or planned. The number 2 popular possibility, the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, will somehow be destroyed either by Jews or by a stray Hezbollah rocket, making way for the rebuilding of the Jewish temple unobstructed, utilizing the entire Temple Mount. Some are even suggesting moving these buildings to another location. Possible, but both are unlikely in our opinion. The number 3 possibility, some believe that the city of David is where the Jewish temple actually stood, so it can be rebuilt there with much less opposition, and all the Islamic holy sites on the traditional Temple Mount can stay in place. We also don't believe this is a likely scenario because too many religious Jews and Christians believe the Temple Mount was and is, well, the Temple Mount, and there is more and more archaeological evidence supporting the fact that this was indeed the historic Temple Mount. The number 4 possibility. Many prominent religious Jewish groups are also promoting the peaceful solution of allowing all 3 monotheistic religions to have separate houses of worship on Temple Mount side by side to worship the one true God, as they say, according to their individual belief systems. In this scenario, the Islamic buildings can stay, and there is still plenty of room up there for a Jewish temple right alongside the Islamic houses of worship. Many even believe that the Dome of the Rock may not actually be housing the area of the Holy of Holies, and that it may have actually been in the northern and or eastern areas of Temple Mount, which are not currently obstructed. There would be much less conflict building the Jewish temple there, alongside the Muslim structures sharing sovereignty. Even if the Dome of the Rock or other Muslim buildings are where the actual temple was, there is a Talmudic rabbinic teaching that the prophet, quote unquote, to come, I'm assuming meaning the prophet like unto Moses, would have the authority to decide to put the temple anywhere on Temple Mount he so chooses. We will briefly look at some aspects of this number 4 Temple Mount option because it seems to fit with Ezekiel 8's digging into the wall and the abomination that Ezekiel saw on the north side of the Temple Mount. However, most likely scenario in our opinion that would truly be an abomination that makes desolate is scenario number 5, or possibly a combination of both 4 and 5. Number 5 is based upon a little publicized rabbinic writing from a rabbi architect named Moshe Kamsky that is linked to or cited on both the Christian Study Bible site, Blue Letter Bible, and the JewishTempleMount.org site if you know where to look. Additionally, I will play a part of a video in which I believe well-known past Knesset member and Temple Mount activist Yehuda Glick espouses what I believe is the very idea expressed in this Jewish paper. This proposal suggests that because the Dome of the Rock was built by what the Jews consider to be a monotheistic religion of Islam, it would be suitable to not only remain on Temple Mount next to a Jewish temple, but could indeed be incorporated into the house of prayer for all nations, quote unquote, i.e., the end times Jewish Third Temple. The paper proposes that the Dome of the Rock would become a central altar or worship area, and then wings would be added onto it as houses of worship for each of the 4, yes, I said 4, monotheistic religions, which according to this paper includes Hinduism. Not sure how they figure Hindus are monotheistic, but they do. This would then make the Dome of the Rock, which very well could have been built right over the place of the Holy of Holies, into a house of prayer for all nations, as the proponents of this idea call it, but we call it a house of prayer for all religions. Actually, we'll go one step further and call it the abomination that makes desolate, should this be the route that is taken, and we will explain why in this video. This number 5 option, we believe very well, may be the option that Yehuda Glick and perhaps other Temple Mount advocates, as well as possibly many Muslim nations, including Iran and Saudi Arabia, may be willing to compromise with, especially if this idea is presented by a master deal maker such as Trump. So let's get started. This video from Nelson Walters' YouTube channel says, Third Temple location, will it coexist with the Dome of the Rock? And here's a short video clip from it.
And in Psalm 27, there is a passage about offering sacrifices in a tent. Now my head will be lifted up above my enemies around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. So it seems to meet that requirement as well. Also notice that these sacrifices are offered in the presence of Israel's enemies. Could that be referring to a Temple Mount that will be shared with the Muslims in the future? Which brings us to the final possibility, the 6th, which is the one I favor. And that idea is that initially the Third Temple won't be a temple at all, but rather simply a tent at first, like the tabernacle in the wilderness. A tent or tabernacle would be much smaller than a temple and could be placed on the Temple Mount without interfering with the existing Muslim structures. Remember what John told us in Revelation, that the large outer court is given to the Gentiles, so only the small tent or tabernacle would be needed.
And here's an article that I found on the Times of Israel website. I had to go to the Wayback Machine. I forget how I found it, but it says, on Temple Mount, some see a dome and imagine an altar. And we can scroll down. There's Yehuda Glick and Benjamin Netanyahu. Next, from godsholymountain.org, an excerpt from this article entitled About the Vision says, the image shown at the top of this article depicts a rebuilt temple in peaceful proximity to the Islamic and Christian shrines in Jerusalem in fulfillment of the purpose of the temple to manifest the one God to the entire world. This vision is absolutely not about compromise for Jews, Muslims, or Christians. Rather, it is about radical fulfillment of the basic tenet of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, and other religions of the world to manifest the one God on earth by worshiping the one God together in peace. It is about a transformation of the Temple Mount to reflect the ultimate prophetic character of God's holy mountain. A PDF paper from this same website, godsholymountain.org, called The Universal Temple, on page 5 says, Number 1, sacrifice in a high place, Bama. Jews cannot make sacrifice in a place other than the temple. However, Gentiles are permitted to perform sacrifice either in the temple or on a high place. 2, quality of the sacrifice. According to the halakha, the sacrificial animal must be without blemish. If any blemish is detected, the animal cannot be sacrificed on the temple's altar. This rule applies to both Jews and Gentiles. However, Gentiles can sacrifice an imperfect animal on a high place, but for sacrifices in the temple, they must bring an animal without blemish. So this is condoning having high places in Israel and Jerusalem, I would assume. And if I remember correctly, all throughout Scripture, the Israelites were in trouble for having high places where sacrifices were done. Number 3, accepting a sacrifice from an idol worshiper in the temple. It is forbidden to accept a sacrifice from a Jew who practices idolatry. However, it is permitted to accept a sacrifice from a Gentile who is an idolater. These differences indicate that the Jewish sources regulated and thereby encouraged the sacrificial offerings of Gentiles and their active worship of the one God, both in high places away from the temple and in the temple itself. As the majority of Gentiles, of course, do not live in the vicinity of Jerusalem, the halakha does not restrict them to sacrifice only at the Temple Mount, as is required for the Jewish nation. Jews were also permitted to teach Gentiles how to perform sacrifices on high places, although Jewish sacrifice there was restricted. Interestingly, permission is given to an idolatrous Gentile to perform a sacrifice in the temple. As stated above, the halakha forbids receiving sacrifices from an idolatrous Jew. As such, a situation is viewed as direct contradiction to the worship of the one true God. Why then should it be permitted to accept sacrifices from an idolatrous Gentile? The reason for this distinction is deep and basic. The altar was built to serve the world, and this is an all-inclusive, unconditional right. The Talmud states this explicitly. On this same website, in their frequently asked questions page, this sums it all up, answering this question that is asked: but even given the role of the temple to bear universal witness to the one God, why would this justify in particular its proximity to Islamic and Christian shrines? Maimonides, one of the greatest Jewish sages of all time, wrote, Mishnah Torah Halakot Melachim 11:4, and all these things of Jesus and Mohammed that came after him are not but to carve the way for the King, Messiah, and to direct the entire world to worship God together, as said, for then will I turn to the peoples a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord to serve him with one consent. Zephaniah 3:9. These religions, according to Maimonides, are part of God's plan toward the transformation to a world in which all will worship the one God together in peace. A rebuilt temple in peaceful proximity to Islamic and Christian shrines would hasten a transformation of these religions towards this goal. Okay, leaving that website, we go to themitzvahproject.org to their article entitled Building the Third Temple. Scrolling down, I'm going to read an excerpt. In the northern section of the eastern wall that faces the Mount of Olives is an interesting offset. The oldest exposed stones of the Temple Mount walls are in this offset section. This suggests that this northern section is indeed older and different than the center and southern sections. With this offset section is a small building known as Solomon's Throne. Surely the king's throne was located in the courtyard area of the temple. In this northern section is also a small structure known as the Dome of Solomon. It is interesting that these references to King Solomon are in the northern section. There are a number of reasons why we think that archaeology should be done in the northern section of Temple Mount. First of all, the area is vacant, and arrangements can be easily made to close off this section so that no one will be disturbed by the digging. The area is rarely used except by school children who play there during their lunch breaks, and there's plenty of room for people to walk around the excavation area to get in and out of the Temple Mount gates. One of the most compelling reasons to dig in the northern section of Temple Mount is found in the Kotel Tunnel. This is also discussed in the section about finding the Golden Ark. There is a place in the northern section of the western wall, which is now underground, where some excavation was done a few years ago. A part of the wall was opened up, and this sounds like Ezekiel being told by Yahweh in a vision to dig in the wall to see the abominations that are done there. And after they had dug a little distance, the explorers said they saw what looked to be a large quantity of golden objects. In order to avoid a conflict with the Muslims, this section of the wall was closed up with 6 feet of cement. We feel that this northern area is where the first temple stood and where the third temple should be built. This will make it possible to share the Temple Mount with the Muslims. We do not in any way, shape, or form want to cause any damage to the mosques or create a problem. In order to have world peace, we must want to have peace. Then follow the law and do what God wants us to do. We know there are people who want to see the mosques removed from Temple Mount. There have been attempts to blow up the Dome of the Rock in the past. The Muslims are afraid that any digging in the Temple Mount area might lead to digging under the mosques, and they do not like that idea either. So let me really quick read the part of Ezekiel that talks about in the vision he is told to dig into the wall. It's Ezekiel chapter 8. And it came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I sat in my house, and the elders of Judah sat before me, that the hand of Yahweh Elohim fell there upon me. And I find this interesting. It's the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day. The 6th month is Elul. And interestingly, the 6th year of the Trump administration would be 2026. So that's the month before all of the fall feasts and Yom Kippur of 2026, for those of you that are familiar with our Revelation time chart. Continuing on, verse 2, Then I beheld, and lo, a likeness, as the appearance of fire, from the appearance of his loins even downward, fire, and from his loins even upward, as the appearance of brightness, as the color of amber. And he put forth the form of a hand, and took me by a lock of my head, and the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven, and brought me in the visions of Elohim to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate that looks toward the north. And this is the upper gate, or the altar gate, and I will show you that later, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provokes to jealousy. And behold, the glory of Elohim of Israel was there, according to the vision that I saw in the plain. Then said he unto me, Son of man, lift up thine eyes now the way toward the north. So I lifted up my eyes the way toward the north, and behold, northward at the gate of the altar, this image of jealousy in the entry. And I'm going to show you why the gate of the altar, the upper gate, looking north from there, is actually looking at the Holy of Holies, and that's where the image of jealousy is. He said, Furthermore unto me, Son of man, seest thou what they do, even the great abominations that the house of Israel commits here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary? But turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations. And he brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. Then he said unto me, Son of man, dig now in the wall. And when I had digged in the wall, behold, a door. And he said to me, Go in, and behold the wicked abominations that they do there. So I went in and saw, and behold, every form of creeping things and abominable beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel, portrayed upon the wall round about. And there stood before them 70 men of the ancients of the house of Israel, and in the midst of them stood Jaazaniah, the son of Shaphan, with every man his censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense went up. Then he said unto me, Son of man, have you seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark, every man in the chambers of his imagery? For they say, Yahweh sees us not. Yahweh has forsaken the earth. He also said unto me, Turn thee yet again, and you shall see greater abominations that they do. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of Yahweh's house, which was toward the north. This again is the upper gate, the gate of the altar. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Then he said to me, Have you seen this, O son of man? Turn yet again, and you shall see greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of Yahweh's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of Yahweh, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs towards the temple of Yahweh, and their faces toward the east, and they worshipped the sun toward the east. Then he said unto me, Have you seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing that the house of Judah, that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence, and have turned to provoke me to anger. And lo, they put the branch to their nose. Therefore I will also deal in fury. My eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet I will not hear them. And that's the end of chapter 8. And chapter 9 is all about the angel with the inkhorn that puts his mark on those that sigh and cry about the abominations being done there on Temple Mount. I believe the abomination of desolation that is put on the Holy of Holies. The ones that sigh and cry about this abomination are the only ones who are saved, and then another angel goes through and destroys everyone else, man, woman, and child. Now, with Ezekiel in mind, let's go to templeinstitute.org and take a look at their diagrams of the temple on Temple Mount, and especially the gates. So here at the top, you're looking at a diagram. Here's the temple. It faces the east. North would be up. And then these gates down here are called the gates of the southern court because they are on the southern side of the Temple Mount. We're going to focus on the upper gate here. And this says the upper gate was the most western of the 4 southern gates of the court. Some say it was called this because it was situated on the ascent of the mountain. Some call the Nicanor gate the upper gate. In this case, the word upper would signify above the women's court. So in either case, this would be the upper gate, and it's the gate going directly toward the Holy of Holies right here, which is the back or western side of the temple. So the upper gate would be directly in line with the Holy of Holies. And as a second witness, we'll go to avande1.sites.luc.edu, Jerusalem. This is a scholars educational type website about Temple Mount. And of course, what we're interested in is the gates, and more particularly, again, the upper gate. So right here, number 2, gates. In Jeremiah 26:10, there is an allusion to the entry of the new gate of Yahweh's house. This doubtless was the upper gate built by Jotham and may reasonably be identified with the gate that looks toward the north and the gate of the altar. So it was called the upper gate, the gate that looks towards the north, and the gate of the altar in Ezekiel 8:3, and with the upper gate of Benjamin in Jeremiah 23. So this would be the gate directly south of the Holy of Holies. So again, let's read Ezekiel 8:3. He, Yahweh, stretched out the form of a hand and took me, Ezekiel, by the lock of my hair, and the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and heaven and brought me in visions of Elohim to Jerusalem, to the door of the north gate of the inner court. Again, that's the gate that goes north, so it's through the southern wall into the inner court, where the seat of the image of jealousy was. That would be this gate right here. And here's the Holy of Holies, just north of that gate. And that is where he saw the seat of the image of jealousy. So what standing there right now over this Holy of Holies? Found this diagram of Temple Mount at templeinstitute.org also, but it is not laying north-south. They've got it to where this side up here is east, bottom is west, etc. So I'm going to rotate this image. Now we've got east over here where it should be, north up here where it should be, south here. So here is where they believe both temples stood. And of course, that is superimposed right over the Dome of the Rock. And so right here would be the gate to the north, or the altar gate. And it would go straight toward the north to the Holy of Holies. So that is how Temple Mount is situated today, with the Dome of the Rock, I believe they're correct, right over the Holy of Holies. And again, going through the upper gate toward the north is where Ezekiel, in Ezekiel chapter 8, saw the image of jealousy. Verse 5 says, Then he said to me, Son of man, lift up your eyes now toward the north. He's at the altar gate. So I lifted up my eyes toward the north, and there, north of the altar gate, was the image of jealousy in the entrance. So he would have been looking where the Holy of Holies would be, where the Dome of the Rock is today. One more point of interest from Ezekiel chapter 8 while we're looking at this diagram. Verse 7 says, He brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked, there was a hole in the wall, as I mentioned earlier. Then he said to me, Son of man, dig into the wall. And when I dug into the wall, there was a door. And he said to me, Go in and see the wicked abominations which they are doing there. Remember, we read earlier in an article how they had been digging under the western wall right here. Here's the Kotel. Here's the western wall, and they have the western wall tunnels that go under here, and they were digging through the wall right here, evidently near the Holy of Holies, because the Muslims had an uprising because they were afraid they were going to be digging under Temple Mount, under the Dome of the Rock. And so that hole had to be in the wall right here somewhere. And so I believe this very well could be the hole in the wall where Ezekiel was told to dig and see the abominations. Perhaps, as we suggested in an earlier message from several years ago, this could also be a tunnel that leads to Zedekiah's cave, where they do the Masonic rituals and the Masonic Mark Mason ceremony every year. Some believe that those tunnels can actually go over here to Temple Mount as well. And so they probably are all connected together. And perhaps this is the hole in the wall that Ezekiel was told to dig in Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 7 and 8. Keep this in mind as we explore what Yehuda Glick, a past Knesset member and Temple Mount activist, has to say about the Dome of the Rock and the Third Temple. Israel 365 News from October 10th, the headline reads, Rabbi Yehuda Glick, we will fulfill our mission for this world to become a light for the nations. And of course, this was just 3 days after October 7th massacre. And here it says that Rabbi Yehuda Glick, a former member of Knesset and founder of Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. Here is the Facebook page for the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation, which he founded. And if you scroll down, here's a post from June 15th, 2020 that has a picture of the Dome of the Rock. It says, this is where the first and second temple once stood, and this is where the third temple will stand. Here's their website, shalomjerusalem.org, where he says in one of the headlines, my house will be called the house of prayer for all nations, Isaiah 56:7. It says Zionism, the next generation. And here's another one of the rotating headers. It says, many nations will say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, that we may walk in his paths. And another says, for the Torah will go forth from Zion, and the word of God from Jerusalem, Isaiah 2:3. And here is his YouTube channel. So he is a very outspoken and active activist for the Temple Mount and the Third Temple. So let's see what he has to say about the Dome of the Rock. And for that, we're going to watch a video of him giving a tour to a Baptist church from the United States. He's giving a tour of Temple Mount.
Today we see this place has the potential of becoming a house of prayer for all nations. It's in our hands to do that, to make sure this is a place of shalom. This is a place that unites us all. We're different. You don't go to a music concert just to see one violin. You want to see the violin, and you want to see the trumpet, and you want to see the drum, and the drum will never be a violin, and the piano will never be a cello. The beauty, and something very interesting. In Hebrew, we say the palace of God. We say, how do we say it? Armon Yah, which means also harmony. Harmonia. So the palace of God is when there's room for everybody. God is not exclusive. He's inclusive. He wants us all to bring about, to learn to respect all of us, and to unite us all. And here we are, to raise the banner of Hashem in his chosen place, in Zion, which he chose for his throne. Here we are, all the nations coming back The state of Israel is a miracle. The friendship between Christian friends in Israel is a miracle. And maybe, who knows, one day we'll see Muslim Zionists as well. And maybe the people from Tehran will also come and pilgrim and praise the Lord Hashem, the creator of the world, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of all humanity. Now there are people preparing the red heifers. You can go to see Shiloh. They brought some red heifers from Texas to Israel. I don't know if those are going to be the ones that will be used or not, but the very fact that we are showing Hashem that we want to be purified, and we want to have this place ready to serve you, to serve one God, and we will all be united around the one and only God. That is a major step, in my eyes, towards the complete redemption of this world.
Okay, so I'm going to point out something while we're up here. So you all see there's a little dome cupola. It's the bigger one. There's two gray ones. The one to the right that's got the bigger cupola is what's called the Dome of the Spirits. And there's actually bedrock right underneath that. The rest of all of this is paving stones, which means that the original mountain would have come up and they leveled all this off with arches and fill. But that and under the Dome of the Rock are actual pieces of bedrock. The one under the Dome of the Rock is large, but it's not flat. I'm thinking that that bigger cupola to the right, the Dome of the Spirits, is the actual threshing floor, because threshing floors would have to be flat. So there is a theory that that would actually be where the Holy of Holies is. It does line up with the Eastern Gate. A friend of mine is Lane Rittmeyer. He's the main archaeologist that measured all of this some years ago. He got permission to go under here, and he's the leading authority. He thinks it's here, but there's others that think it's there. And when we go on the Western Wall tunnel tour later today, there's going to be people praying against the Western Wall way inside, like a woman sitting there praying. She's pointing right to that, not to this. So it's just interesting. And if it is there, obviously, then there's room for all of these on the same platform. But again, we don't know. We know it was right here somewhere, though, okay? Also, if you all remember, the scripture does say that the temple will be rebuilt, okay? So Daniel 9, Daniel 11, 2 Thessalonians 2, all refer to a man of sin coming and desecrating the temple. 3.5 years into a 7-year time period that begins with a peace agreement. So it's really amazing to me that all of this is happening right now. And I would not doubt if a final peace is achieved that would include the rebuilding of the temple. Remember, God said to John, do not measure the outer court because it's given unto the Gentiles. And I've spoken to rabbis, not Yehuda, but other rabbis, and I would like to know your opinion on this, that since Islam does not worship idols, does not have idol imagery, and worships one God, that they would permit at least the Al-Aqsa Mosque to stay in place when the temple is here. And then maybe a church or St. Anne's Church would be the three monotheistic religions all represented on the same mount. Could be potentially the way that all of this would come together.
You want to hear my answer?
Yeah, please.
Now listen closely to his answer.
My answer is definitely yes and definitely no. Now, the reason I say definitely yes, anybody who worships one God is worshiping one God, and therefore, by all means, the building that was standing in front of us can be used as part of a temple.
He is looking at and speaking of the Dome of the Rock that can be used as the third temple. Listen again.
Anybody who worships one God is worshiping one God, and therefore, by all means, the building that was standing in front of us can be used as part of a temple. This building right here, it was built for a one God, even though I don't follow all the doctrine of the Islam. They worship one God, and therefore we can use this building as a temple. Whether we have a church to the right and a mosque to the left, then we are destroying the whole concept, because the concept of a temple is one house of prayer for all nations. You're going to build a church here, which denomination? You have only 20,000 denominations, so you're going to have a Catholic church.
It'll be Baptist.
A Baptist church, okay. So therefore, the same thing in Islam and the same thing in Jews. You're going to be an Orthodox synagogue. The concept of a temple is one building that is a house of prayer for all nations. Because to have a multiple amount of buildings here, we're not getting anywhere. We want a house which is a house of prayer. But we want it to be built through, just like the state of Israel was established by all the United Nations voting for the state of Israel, where we want the temple to be rebuilt when all humanity supports the concept of building. But first, in order to reach that, we have to first prepare the most important vessel of the temple, as I said before, the hearts of mankind. And we have to understand, you know, that you read the book of Joshua, you see Joshua defeated this king and defeated that king and this, and finally he defeated all the kings. You see, wow, everything's fine. Then you turn the next page to Judges and you see there's all trouble. What happened? It's very simple. Conquering is not just a military event. What conquers, just like today, what conquers Judea and Samaria is not the victory in 1967, it's the establishment of settlements all over. Children going to school, that's what conquers the land. The same thing, the same concept is about here. When we are ready to come here and make this place a house of prayer for all nations, respect others that don't agree with us, and together unite to one God, then we're on the right path. If we will be able to establish a building which will serve as a house of prayer, united for all of us, different people can worship God in different ways, but one God, then we're in the right way.
Okay, so for the rest of this video, we're going to look at what this third temple might look like and why it will be an abomination of desolation or an image of jealousy sitting on the Holy of Holies. So let's go to templemount.org again. And this article is entitled, "The Third Temple for All Humankind on the Temple Mount of Jerusalem," by Moses V. Komsky, architect. We'll scroll down to the bottom and just read about Moshe Komsky. He graduated from Moscow Architectural Institute in 1962. In 1977, he received a PhD degree in architecture. The author has lived in Israel since 1993, working as an architect. He is a student of the history of religions from positions of so-called secular believers. And I actually found the link to this article on blueletterbible.org, which is a Christian website, a Christian-created website that helps you study the Bible. It has all of the Strongs and everything. Many of you are probably familiar with blueletterbible.org, and I do love that website. But on their website, they've got a page of links to interesting articles that they think are pertinent. And one of those links goes here to this article by Moses V. Komsky. The need to integrate economic, politic, and cultural life of nations manifests itself clearer than ever in the modern world. This process is realized in the two major directions: under pressure through power of one over another, and by free will as a brotherhood of people devoted to their common Father Creator. And I'm not going to have time to read this entire article, so I would direct you there to read it all, but I'm just going to read the pertinent excerpts for our purposes and look at a diagram of what a third temple would look like, which incorporates the Dome of the Rock as a central altar area for all of the monotheistic religions. The website is, again, templemount.org/Komsky, KOMSKY /index.html. So I skipped down a few paragraphs and I'm going to read here. Certain success of the ecumenical movement has strengthened the basis for the creation of the common European market as the first step to national union on the grounds of free will. In the recent half of the century, the goodwill dialogue of Christianity and Judaism has for the first time been possible. The whole rehabilitation of Judaism as a worldwide religion, acknowledgement of legality and equality of the two testaments, acknowledgement of Jesus, a great prophet, by Israelites, and acknowledgement by some Christian theologians that Jesus was created by the Heavenly Father. All these gives stimulus for mutual approaching of religions of Abrahamic origin, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and afterwards all monotheistic religions according to the saying, the one shepherd, creator, the one flock, mankind. In the middle of the 20th century, there appeared a theory of a Russian mystic, D. Andreev, described in the book Mundane Rose, published only in the beginning of the 90s. It depicts the opportunity of inventing a common, concluding, religion or interreligion in the perspective of 2 to 3 centuries that will be based on the synthesis and preservation of valuable impact, as Rav Kook put it, of each historically formed congregation. The way of their purification lies through confessional bursts protruded from the essence of faith in the one Lord for all the people of the earth. And we heard Yehuda Glick say many times, one God. We all serve one God. If you're a monotheistic religion, you serve one God. Of course, I don't hold to this approach, but we're just using this so that we can understand the thinking behind using the Dome of the Rock as a house of prayer for all nations and what this may actually entail. The article goes on to say, the mutual approach of religions already started today may promote the construction of a multi-congregational temple in a number of religious centers of the world. For example, Benares, Rome, Istanbul, Mecca, Moscow, London, cities of the New World, China, Japan, etc. And we know there is one in the United Arab Emirates already. It is worth to notice that in the town of Delhi at the end of the 20th century, a temple of 9 religions was built. The image of the third temple of the whole mankind on the Jerusalem Temple Mountain can make a proto-image for inspiring such new type of temples, and its realization in turn may be their ultimate result. With such new attempts of Jews sharing with Christians and with Muslims, the Promised Land can be transformed into the center of pilgrimage, while Jerusalem can become the spiritual capital of the world. Skipping down a paragraph, there is an architect in Israel who has designed a full-size program of developing an infrastructure of the kind. He also has written a work to say that it is of vital importance for Israel to approve the idea and create facilities for broad-scaled pilgrimage to the secret parts of the country. He timed his program to the 2000th Jubilee of Christianity, but he met a full misunderstanding from the authorities on all the levels. The fact is that Israel is not ready to have deeds of the kind and does not understand what for it has seated in the Holy Land. Now let me proclaim the idea of that architect. See Reuven Romem, Pilgrimage 2000, a detailed report, manuscript, Jerusalem, 1998. This is the part of this idea that I believe will likely interest President Trump very much. In his reasoning, he stood on the position of economical profit, though understood also the peacemaking effect of his proposals. His logic is a simple one. There are more than 1 milliard Christians on the earth. Each of them dreams of visiting the Holy Land at least once to go the route of Abraham, the father of all believers, and the route of the Israeli prophets, and the route of Christ, as well as the route of founders of Islam. To meet that purpose, it is necessary to build new roads and pedestrian paths apart from consisting economic roads and ways, and build price-worth hotels, engineering, communications, carry out, etc., etc. So this touts the building of the third temple as a good road to peace, as well as economic growth, prosperity, building hotels, etc. Scrolling down a bit, you can start to see the picture of this proposed temple, which incorporates the Dome of the Rock as the central altar area. But I'm going to continue reading first. The present-day Orthodox people imagine the eschatological, faraway future of the mankind as transition of the survived people to Judaism after apparition of Messiah. Meanwhile, the ancient promises of the Lord to prophets concerning future surviving of all nations do not mention the conditions of transition of all nations to Judaism. Look unto me, and be ye saved, all the ends of the earth, for I am God, and there is none else. Isaiah 45:22. For as the earth brings forth her bud, as the garden causes the things that are sown in it to spring forth, so the Lord God will cause righteousness and praise to spring forth before all the nations. Isaiah 61:11. Even them will I bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. Isaiah 56:7. So far as other nations have found their way to God, their common house on the Temple Mountain in Jerusalem must take into consideration valuable achievements of each such ways, of each of the ways of the other religions. Consequently, the common temple belonging to the whole mankind cannot be a temple of one religion or denomination only. Vice versa, it must grant room for all four now known, and this is all four now known religions of one God: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. Interestingly, at this, each of the four religions must be presented by two of its equal essences, in the traditional form and in the mystical, according as Kabbalah, mundane rose, Sufism, and Buddhism. So the third temple of the mankind must have a compound structure, including 8 prayer houses. If you look at the building, the Dome of the Rock, and I'm going to scroll down so you can see this whole diagram here, which the Israeli Orthodox people dream to demolish, you can make sure that the building entirely suits for the common altar of the third temple to come. It has a symmetric plan with 8 facets and one clearly expressed axis swooped upon into the sky. The building is crowned with a magnificent gold dome, 23 meters in diameter, and towers above the upper platform by 36 meters and above the lower platform more than by 40 meters. So, as Yehuda Glick was suggesting, the Dome of the Rock could become part of this third temple, this house of prayer for all nations. And so I am thinking that he has obviously likely seen these plans and this idea, and this is what he is referring to. Reading further, the Dome of the Rock with the Holy Rock itself can serve as the foundation stone of the third temple, as it can easily grant the proper condition for placing the common altar, sanctum sanctorum, of unified religions. 8 sides of the cupolas may be treated as basis for construction of prayer buildings of various monotheistic congregations according to their accepted orientation in relation to the altar. Judaism from the eastern side, Christianity from the western side facing east, Islam from the northern side facing south, and Hinduism from the southern one facing north. The apartments for mystical practices, Kabbalah, mundane rose, Sufism, and Buddhism, can be situated near the corresponding buildings of the traditional theologies. See the figure below. So look at this. Here's the Dome of the Rock in the center. Here are the 4 main. Here's Judaism, here's Hinduism, here's Christianity, and here's Islam, and that was going clockwise. And then in between each one is their mystical counterpart: Hindu mysticism, Buddhism; Christian mysticism, the mundane rose; Islamic mysticism, Sufism; and Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. Now, what is really interesting, look at this top picture to the top right, and you can see the Dome of the Rock here. For those of you that have studied the pagan origins of Christianity and other religions, we know that domed buildings can be a picture of the female sex organs or the womb. So think of this sitting right over the Dome of the Rock as being a womb or female sex organ. And this is going to get a little graphic, so if you have kids in the room, you might want to tell them to leave. But we also know that obelisks, tall, skinny structures, are phallic symbols, or the male organ. So if you consider this center Dome of the Rock a female organ, what do these 8 wings that represent the 4 major religions and their mystic side? We've got 8 long, skinny, narrow wings going into 8 sides of this womb. So are these 8 phallic symbols? People enter through these doors of their respective religions and then go into the central altar area, the womb, such as foreign seeds entering a womb, which sits over the Dome of the Rock. If this is indeed that symbolism, would that not constitute an abomination of desolation standing in the holy place? Once you see this, once I saw this, I cannot unsee it. This is turning the Dome of the Rock, Temple Mount, into a horror, receiving foreign seeds, people from foreign religions, worshiping foreign gods, going through different doors. Yeshua said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to the Father but by me. He also said that he is the door. There are not 8 doors. There are not 8 entrances into the Holy of Holies. There is one entrance to the Holy of Holies, and that is Yeshua Messiah. This is truly an abomination. In my eyes, I see 8 phallic symbols with 8 foreign seeds raping the Temple Mount and the Holy of Holies. I don't believe that our Creator, our Yeshua, our Messiah, would be happy at all with this. And when this is done, those that are sighing and crying over the abominations being done here, are they the ones that are going to be sealed with the seal of Yahweh? And then destruction is going to come upon all those that are participating in this, starting at his house with his elders, as we are told in Ezekiel chapter 9. Is this the abomination that the 2 witnesses are going to go up on Temple Mount and start witnessing against? If this is started to be built, let me read Ezekiel chapter 9. Then he called out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, Let those who have charge over the city draw near, each with a deadly weapon in his hand. And suddenly 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate. And I showed you where the upper gate was. That is where Ezekiel looked north and saw the abomination of desolation standing over the holy place, which directly north of the upper gate, again would stand this abomination. If it were to be built, right now the Dome of the Rock stands there, but add these 8 wings on and bring in all the religions and mysticism, and that truly would be the abomination of desolation sitting there. Anyway, suddenly 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate which faces north, each with a battle axe in his hand. One man among them was clothed with linen and had a writer's inkhorn at his side. They went in and stood beside the bronze altar. Now the glory of the Elohim of Israel had gone up from the cherub where it had been to the threshold of the temple. And he called to the man clothed with linen, who had a writer's inkhorn at his side. And Yahweh said to him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within it. To the others he said, In my hearing, go after him through the city and kill. Do not let your eye spare, nor have any pity. Utterly slay old and young, men, maidens, and little children and women. But do not come near anyone on whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. So they began with the elders who were before the temple. Then he said to them, Defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go out. And they went out and killed in the city. So it was that while they were killing them, I was left alone, and I fell on my face and cried out and said, Ah, Yahweh Elohim, will you destroy all the remnant of Israel in pouring out your fury on Jerusalem? Then he said to me, The iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great, and that would be Christians and Jews, which were represented in the video with Yehuda Glick. Yehuda Glick is a Jew, and that was a Baptist church tour. And the land is full of bloodshed, and the city full of perversity. I can't think of anything more perverse than that, quote-unquote, house of prayer for all nations. For they say, Yahweh has forsaken the land, and Yahweh does not see. And as for me also, my eye will neither spare, nor will I have pity, but I will recompense their deeds on their own head. Just then the man clothed with linen, who had the inkhorn at his side, reported back and said, I have done as you have commanded. So should something like this abomination start to be built on Temple Mount, and is touted as bringing prosperity to Israel, visitors to Israel, a house of prayer for all nations, peace in the land, peace, peace when there is no peace. I would not go anywhere near this thing unless the two witnesses are two groups of people and you are called to be one of the two witnesses. However, other than that, I would sigh and cry and stay away from this place, this abomination. So very quickly, we're going to look at some other websites that envision a house of prayer for all nations and take a look at what these visions look like. Here's thirdtemple.org. Notice this video that's playing in the header. I'm going to play this actual video from their YouTube channel for you in just a minute. Scrolling down just a bit, you can see that it says, "You support the most humanist project in history. Members 929,723. Going to their page, Let's Build the Third Temple, we see right here about a paragraph down, the more we are, the faster the third temple will be built. Our goal is to reach 1 million subscribers by 2025, 500,000 of whom being Israelis of all religions of any obedience. So their goal is to reach 1 million subscribers by 2025, and we just read that they have on May 3rd, 2025, 929,723. So they're very close to this goal. Here is their YouTube channel called Third Temple Build Together for Humanity. Let's watch this short video. It's about 3 minutes long.
What is the significance of the Third Temple? The temple is a spiritual meeting point between God and humanity. It is a meeting point between the infinite and the finite, face to face. This is embodied in the structure standing on the foundation stone on the Temple Mount, the place where, according to tradition, the creation of the world began. This is a connection to our roots, connection to the real meaning of life, which is to correct the deficiencies of our world. The temple is a place where divinity is manifest, so it is a source of holiness and joy, spreading to the entire world. Every person has a spiritual journey. Our soul within desires to connect with God, the creator of the world. The temple is a source of spiritual abundance, a connection between God, nature, and humanity. The effect of humanity will be reflected in the desire to seek out and promote peace in the world, in the reduction of wars until they disappear completely, which will lead to world peace, fellowship, and social justice. Building the temple will bring humanity and nature back into balance. This will have an ecological impact and go beyond the intelligent use of natural resources. Therefore, the temple will be built due to the needs of humanity. The people of Israel are a universal people, destined to connect the world to the divine presence after 2,000 years of exile. The people of Israel are returning to their homeland to fulfill their destiny for the good of all humanity. The third temple will be a place of prayer for all nations. It is a sacred place built entirely by joy and fellowship. It is a place of spiritual elevation, a place of hope. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations.
Sounds good, doesn't it? It's no wonder that many, many people will fall for it, and they will hate the two witnesses that are witnessing against this that is supposed to bring about world peace and unity. The page called Architecture on this website does say these plans will be deposited by the Jerusalem municipality once the Temple Mount is released from the buildings that currently exist on it, and that is suggesting that those buildings will be removed. But then, of course, this temple that they're talking about here would fit right in with what Yehuda Glick envisions, which would actually use the Dome of the Rock, which is currently just a placekeeper marking and covering the Holy of Holies. So I could see a compromise being made, especially with a great negotiator, this compromise that would incorporate these two ideas together. Then the page labeled construction. Right here it says, if construction of the second temple took 7 years with the methods they had at the time, we believe that construction today will also take 7 years from the start of the work. That's an interesting time frame. And lastly, we go to Chabad.org to an article entitled, Will We Use Technology to Build the Third Temple? Question: when Mashiach comes and the temple is rebuilt, what role will technology play in the construction process? Will we be using laser cutters and cranes, or will we be using Iron Age techniques of the first two temples? Skipping down, the truth is that technology is a creation of God, all of technology. The wheel is just as much an invention as 4G LTE. The potential for both was put into the world at the first instant of creation. Technology is not inherently good or evil. It is just like a knife, which can be used for murder or can make a salad. At least as much good as negativity has been brought into the world through technological explosion of our generation. The fact that I can sit here and answer your question even though I never met you is a testament to that. To put it another way, if Moses lived today, he probably would have the most popular blog on the planet, and the internet would crash every time he tweeted. And this is the part that I found most interesting. Similarly, if we were to build the temple, it would be a floodlit construction site, maybe with 3D printing technology, so that the world does not have to wait an instant longer than necessary to serve God there. In all likelihood, it will be climate controlled with smart home technology and biometric locks, if those would be needed. Biometric locks. Is this the reason that those that want to go there would receive the mark of the beast? And how the mark of the beast would actually be a token of worship, receiving the mark in order to open the biometric locks because you are allowed to be there? Is that how the mark of the beast would be accepted and start among those that actually profess to believe in the Creator? Admittedly, this is all speculation on our part. However, we believe that the body of Messiah needs to be warned of these possibilities and not fall into the trap of deception. We are simply being watchmen on the wall, warning of the dangers of something like this being constructed on Temple Mount, what it might look like, and how the mark of the beast may be enacted through it. Here's one last look at this possible abomination of desolation, which is a spiritual picture of the raping of Temple Mount and the Holy of Holies. May it not be so. Blessings and shalom to all of you and everyone in your home.